Shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. Are you being called by the Most High to do something? Is the Most High, the creator of heaven and earth, sustainer of life, giver of good gifts, the one who resides in the heavens and is in control of all things, is he calling you to do something? Now, very often, when we think of the Most High calling us to do something, we see it as a privilege. And it is. But that calling could also be something that becomes negative depending on your response. And so being called isn't necessarily the be all or end all. But are you going to be chosen? And that is what it is all about. It is not just about being called. It is about being called and being chosen. Because there are people that are often called, as we will see, and that calling does not result to them being chosen. As the scripture says, many are called, but few are chosen. And that should give us a sobering reminder that just because we are called, it doesn't mean we are going to be chosen. But there is something we can do to make sure we are chosen when we are called. And so I want to spend a brief bit of time looking at a parable to give us some insight to what it means to be called and what it means to be chosen, what we can do to turn that calling into being chosen. And I'm going to then, at the end of this very brief lesson, link it to something that I taught on about a year and a half ago, talking about our captivity and our seeking to be free, not just in a spiritual sense, but in a physical sense, talking about the gathering, talking about the second Exodus. But we need to be able to recognize the Most High's voice in all things so that we have clarity of mind, clarity of thought, and then clarity of action. I want to look at this parable very briefly in the book of Matthew, chapter 22. And this parable has many different insights, but I want to cover one particular angle. I'll read the parable through and then I will go through the points necessary. The parable is in Matthew 22, and I'll start in verse 2, which says, "The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which had made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fatling are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, and another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then saith he to his servants, The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore unto the highway, and as many as ye shall find, bid them to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highway, and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man which had not on a wedding garment. And he said unto him, Friend, how came in thou hither, not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. And said the king to his servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen." And so we see this parable referring to a king and a wedding feast. And the feast who was prepared for those guests who did not come, they were not found worthy. And so the king then sent his servants to go and find as many as they could, both good and bad, and invite them to the feast. And we see that when the guests came to the feast and the king came in, he saw a particular individual who was not well dressed. He was not dressed in a wedding garment. He was not dressed fit for a wedding as a guest. And when the king asked him where is his wedding garment, he had no response. He was speechless. And so the king told the servants to bind him hand and foot and cast him into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So this was a guest that was invited to the wedding feast. In other words, he was called. He was called to come to the feast. And he did. But he showed up unprepared. And when he was unprepared and had no answer to the reason of being unprepared, he was then cast out into outer darkness where there was weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so there are a few things I want to cover in a brief manner before we go into the actual purpose of understanding being called and chosen. The first thing is that they who were the feast was originally for were found unworthy, which we find in verse 8. They didn't come to the wedding, they were not ready, and they were found unworthy. So we need to be found worthy when we are called. And those who didn't come because they were not worthy were swiftly moved on from to the wider population, who was the good and the bad, which is the second point. That the bad even are called. It is not only the good, it is good and bad, which we find in verse 10. That it says, so those servants went into the highways and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. So the calling may be for the good and the bad. Both will be called. The key thing is how to be chosen. Then we look at it is better to not go to the feast at all than to go unprepared. And we find that in verse 12, when the king came to the guests and said, friend, how did you come to this feast not being dressed appropriately, not wearing a wedding attire? And he was speechless. So though he came to the feast, he was unprepared. And then we see he was cast out into outer darkness. And then we have the key line in verse 14, that many are called, but few are chosen. So the majority, both good and bad, as we saw in verse 10, are called, but only few, a select few, the minority, are chosen. So the question is then, what is it that makes us chosen? What is it that transforms us from being called into also being chosen? Because the king was very specific that they should find as many as they could, both good and bad. And so when those people came, it means they were called. And very often we look at being called as a good thing. And as I say, it is a good thing when the Most High is calling us. But how do we respond to that calling? That is going to determine whether it is a good thing to be called, or whether in the case of the wedding guests who had on no wedding garment, whether it is a bad thing. Because of course he was cast out into outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, something we do not want to be part of. So we have to understand, what is it that makes us go from being called to being chosen? And the key thing that makes us be chosen by the Most High, rather than just be called, but to also be chosen, is our obedience. Now, you've heard many times the scripture that says obedience is better than sacrifice. And when the Most High calls his people, he expects a response, a positive response, We are free moral agents. We have free will. We have free choices. We have the ability to make decisions. We have the ability to respond to that calling or not, depending on our conviction. And so if we are called and we respond accordingly, and if we respond in obedience, then we will be chosen, because the Most High sees that we are willing to comply with the calling. We are willing to be obedient. But obedience is not just turning up at the wedding without the garment, because that is not obedience. Obedience is when you're invited to a wedding and you accept that invitation, but you come to the wedding appropriately as an appropriate guest, dressed in the appropriate manner. And that would have constituted to full obedience by the person who came to that wedding feast without a wedding garment. Because if he came in his full attire, it means he's taking the calling of the king to the wedding feast seriously. But if you come without the garment, but you just show up, it's just like you're going through the motions. It's just like you're turning up, but you're not really believing, or you're not really serious about that calling, because you know you're coming to an important event, yet you haven't worn the appropriate garments. So using all of that as a brief bit of foundation, a brief bit of background, we are going to now see how our obedience will take us from being called to being chosen. And sometimes when we talk about obedience, it doesn't always come with the full understanding, or it doesn't always come with the full conviction, but you choose to be obedient because you know it's the right thing to do. There are times when the Most High gives us an instruction and we may not always have the full picture. We may not have the full understanding. We may not even have the full conviction about the thing the Most High is telling us to do. But because we trust him, because we believe in him, we go into it with obedience. And then the picture will open up later on. The full picture will be revealed. Then we will get the understanding. We'll say, I'm so glad I obeyed to the Most High, because he has now shown me why it was important to listen to this instruction or to carry out the task he has given. And so in an ideal world, we would have obedience working hand in hand, working in tandem with having belief or having the conviction. So we will be obedient because we fully believe. It's just like you go to work because you believe you are going to be paid. You do a day's work and you believe for that day's work you are going to receive a day's wage. Now, if you believed that by going to work you would not be paid for that day's work, would you still turn up and go to work knowing that you're not going to be paid? You probably wouldn't. I wouldn't. Why would I work for free? Why am I going to work if they're not going to pay me what is agreed? Of course, if you knew there wasn't that contract or that reliability that you're going to get what you are due, you probably wouldn't work in the first place. Why would you work for somebody who's not going to pay you? And so in that scenario, you have the belief that you will be paid. And so you comply with the obedience by going to work and receiving your wage. Now, to flip the script, what would you do if you knew you would be paid even if you didn't go to work? Would you still turn up at work even if you knew you would be paid? There'll be no other consequence. Nothing will be said. You would receive your day's pay without doing a day's work. Would you still go to work? And that one is something that we are often given by the Most High to see what we will do with what we have, to see with the knowledge and understanding that we've been given, what will we do with it? Knowing the Most High is full of grace and mercy, will we take that grace and mercy for granted because we know he is still merciful at the end of the day? Will we abuse that power, so to speak? And this is where we get into this territory of being obedient to the calling to make us chosen, not just called. A very important principle, especially as we are operating in the times we're in, when the world is a more and more strange place day by day, and when events are taking place that are shaping literally the future of multitudes. Are we going to be obedient to the Most High's call? Is the Most High calling us? We've seen that many are called. So on the basis that many are called, it is likely that we are one of the many, because many is the majority. But are we going to be one of the minority, being those who are chosen? And as I said, it is our obedience that will tell us whether we will be chosen. It is that will separate those who are being called from those who are being chosen, their obedience. And so I wanted to give this brief bit of foundation using this parable. And as I said at the beginning, there's multiple learnings for the parable, but I'm just focusing on one particular one, which is the obedience to being called, and linking that in with these end times where we are. Now, the purpose of the message is because there are quite a few people that I know personally, and some people that have reached out to me, that have been considering relocating. They are in various places in the world where maybe things are in these Western countries are not what we would want as believers, or maybe there are other apprehensions people have about the times we're in, knowing the things that are going to come, especially in these Western nations, though it will be worldwide, but the Western nations, the ones that will be affected the most. And so many people are thinking about relocating, moving to another place, whether it's for safety reasons, whether it's for being more self-sufficient, being off-grid, whatever it might be. There are many people that are looking at these things, and people have been looking at these things over the years. But as we get closer and closer to the ending of times, we're seeing that these things are ramping up even more. And so some people are wondering whether or not this is something that the Most High is actually inspiring them to do, or whether it's just something that's in their head, and obviously because they have free will, they're making the decision whether to do it or not. And so I've had a few people mention these type of things to me, and even in my own personal life, I've seen some opportunities maybe open up that haven't always been there. And then you start to consider these things. And the wider context of it all is, as a believer, we want to be in line with the Most High. We want to do the things that He has called us to do. And so is the Most High calling you in your particular situation to make a transition elsewhere? Is that something that you think He has put on your heart, or is that something that is on your heart, whether it's from Him or not? Are you making that consideration, seeing the deterioration of things in this world and thinking, I want to be somewhere else where I'm less affected by the things going on, or I want to be somewhere else which is closer to being in line with the Most High's principles? All of these things have to be considered. And as we saw from the parable, that both the good and bad are called. When it came to the wedding feast and those who were supposed to go were not worthy to attend, both the good and bad were called. And so sometimes in this particular instance where we are in these last days, it may not only be the good that are being called, maybe it's also the bad. But what will separate the two is the obedience, because that will take you from being called to being chosen. And so with the background of this parable and many other lessons that we can learn, how do we recognize whether the Most High is calling us, and how do we recognize whether the desires that we have are desires of Him, or whether they are self-desires or desires from other sources? Now, as I mentioned before, around about 18 months ago, I did a teaching on the second Exodus and talking about the second Exodus being something that is a two-part process. The first part being something that you as an individual, you as a collective family will make your way to the place the Most High is calling you at the appropriate time. And the second part will be the Most High taking you into a place to sanctify you if you qualify for the second Exodus, whether it be by heritage or whether it be by faith in Mashiach. And so, as we are now a year and a half closer to this event from when this original lesson went out, I want to revisit a particular part of that lesson to give you, hopefully by Yah's grace, some understanding of when the Most High is inspiring you to do something versus when it is thoughts just of your own doing with your own free will. We have to get this understanding because that will then determine how we move, considering that if we are being called, we also want to be chosen. And the way we are chosen after being called is through our obedience to that calling. And so I'm going to refer to this particular teaching, just a short clip of it, around 20 minutes of that particular teaching. I'm going to clip it onto the end of this video. And perhaps if the Most High is willing, I will expound on the particular topic of being called and being chosen on a separate teaching. But I just wanted to use it as foundation with the benefit of the clip from the previous video to answer some of those questions as to should we do something if we think we are being called, and how do we know we are being called by the Most High and it's not just, like I said, our own thoughts or our own feelings on a particular topic for various reasons we may have. So I'm going to leave you with this video clip. Please do watch it and please take it to the Most High about whether you are being called in this particular instance to make a transition elsewhere. Because as I said, as time is moving on from the point of the last video that I've mentioned up until now, a year and a half later, many more people are asking this question. Many more people have actually made a transition already or in the process of making it. And some who never had that desire are getting that desire more and more and are wondering what to do. And the Most High is the one that has all the answers, all the solutions, and has the perfect timing. And so he is always going to be our source. But as I said, there are some times that we may not necessarily have the full understanding or the full conviction, but there is a test on board to see will we be obedient. And it is that obedience that will eventually get us the understanding of what the Most High is telling us to do and why, and then will also give us the status of being chosen when we respond to being called. So hopefully this short lesson has given some foundation of being called and being chosen. And now watch the rest of the video with this clip that was done 18 months ago to give you more insight, and then take it to the Most High in your prayer closet and see what he tells you. And remember that obedience is always better than sacrifice. And eventually when we're obedient without understanding, the understanding will come, and then we'll have the perfect picture. And it is that obedience that makes our calling become being chosen. So I'll leave it here. Watch the video clip. And to all those that belong to the Most High, may he bless you and keep you. The Most High can give us collective, and he can also give us individual instruction. And so a collective instruction has not been given or has not been made for us to begin the process of the gathering. The Most High hasn't made any action that takes the children of Yasharal out of their place of captivity and brings them into whichever place he's leading us. That hasn't happened collectively. But have we individually been inspired to begin this journey? This is what we're going to look at. How do we know if the Most High is inspiring us to leave Babylon from an individual basis and it is not our own fault. We know collectively he's not telling us all to leave Babylon, because if he was telling us collectively to leave, then we would have the signs, we would have the signals, we would have the collective understanding that we all need to leave. We don't have that. But is he individually giving us that understanding that we need to leave? And when I say individually, I don't mean every individual, because as already mentioned in the clip, the Most High can give me an instruction that he may not give you. So we now need to see, is he giving us individual instructions? We've seen over the years, many people have left their places of captivity, be it the United States of America, be it other European countries, be it the United Kingdom, wherever they are, and people have migrated or immigrated and gone to Africa. And some have gone to Africa, I suppose some have gone to other places or other continents, but quite a lot of people have relocated somewhere in Africa. Now, for the vast majority of those people, they have just made that decision within themselves. They have chosen to go there, and they've chosen to set up for a better life, for a life not oppressed by the oppressors. But there are some people that have openly said the reason why they chose to go to Africa is because the Most High inspired them to go over there. And some have even gone further and said it's because they were told to go over there and to prepare things for the second Exodus. And as I say, this is not a recent thing. Some of these things have happened years ago. But the question is today, is the Most High inspiring more and more people to make that journey? Again, on an individual or a family basis, not collectively as Yasharal. So we're going to look at some things which are now going to show us if the Most High is inspiring us individually or by a family basis to leave Babylon, or if it's our own thoughts in our head and it's not actually the Most High calling us. Let's see some of these things. Now, is your desire to leave Babylon motivated by fear, i.e. fear of a incoming war, World War III, fear of the economy collapsing and all the dramas and troubles and challenges that will cause, or fear of another pandemic with diseases that could be lethal, that could kill or destroy or whatever it is? Is your desire to leave this place motivated by any of those things or any other thing that may not be covered? Well, 2 Timothy 1:7 says that Yah does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And 1 John 4:18 says that perfect love casts out fear. We know that Yah's love is perfect, and so therefore where Yah's love exists, fear should not be present, because fear should be cast out. And Proverbs 29:25 says the fear of a man is a snare, but those who trust in the Most High will be kept safe. Basically, all these scriptures relate to fear. And we know that fear is not from the Most High. So if your desire to leave Babylon is motivated by fear for the various things already discussed and others that may be in your mind, then that is not of the Most High. That's not what he's calling you to do if your desire to leave is because you're fearful of what may be to come. And some of our brethren, some of our brothers and sisters that have left over the past have been because of those reasons. And if they were because of those reasons, then it was not the Most High telling them to leave, but rather their own thoughts or their own free will that made that decision to go. Now, is your desire to leave Babylon motivated by the want to escape your individual circumstance? Now, we know that all of us scattered across the four corners of the world live in various situations, in various predicaments, that some may be of our own doing and some may just be because life has happened, and we are fed up of those predicaments, we're fed up of that situation, and therefore we just want to leave Babylon and enter into a place where the Most High sanctifies us and takes care of us. If that is your key motivation, if that is what is really wanting you to leave Babylon, then we have to look at the scripture which shows us if our predicament is in such a case that we don't like it anymore. It shows us what we should do. 1 Peter chapter 5 verses 8 through to 11, where it reads, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the Allah of grace, who has called us unto the eternal glory by Hamashiach Yahusha, after that ye have suffered a while, makes you perfect, establishes you, strengthens you, and settles you. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever, so be it." So we see in effect that we are being told to be sober and vigilant because of the adversary, the devil, who's walking like a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour. And we are told we should resist, be steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are going on with our brothers and sisters throughout the world. We all have problems, we all have situations. And it tells us that Elohim of all grace, who has called us unto eternal glory by his beautiful Son, it shows us that after we've suffered for a while, it will make us perfect, establish us and strengthen us and settle us. So what this is saying in effect is that if we are in a situation that is not to our liking, that after we have endured for a while, as the scripture says, the Most High will show us a way out. He will never give us more than we could bear. So if your motivation to leave this place of captivity is because of your individual circumstance, then that is not the Most High calling you to leave, because we should remain in the situation until he shows us a way out. And that all boils down to your desire wanting to leave. Is your desire to do with fear, or is it motivated by escaping your individual circumstances or predicament? That will show us it's not from the Most High. Now, is your desire to leave motivated by living amongst Yah's people and serving him in Ruach and truth in accordance with the uncorrupted word and void of the doctrine of men? So does your desire to leave, if you have this desire to leave, is it because primarily you just want to serve the Most High? You just want to be amongst his people where there will be truth and uncorruption of his word and no doctrines of men? Do you want to leave because you want to be in that environment? If you do, as it says in John 8:32, that you will know the truth and the truth will make you free. As it says in John 4:24, that Yah is a Ruach, and anyone that comes to him has to come in Ruach and Amat, or Ruach and truth, spirit and truth. So if this is your motivation, if these things are your motivation, then we have a perfect platform to understand that this could be the Most High inspiring us, because we want to leave this place, not just to escape, not just because we are scared. We want to leave because we want to be with the Most High and his people. That is our primary reason for wanting to leave. Then it is likely that the Most High is inspiring you to take the first step of the process of leaving Babylon. And Psalm 27 and verse 4 says, "One thing I have desired of Yahweh, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of Yahweh all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of Yahweh and inquire in his temple." So this is telling us that this is the one thing I have desired. The one thing that I will seek after is to dwell in the house of Yahweh, to dwell in his presence, which we know that the second Exodus will bring. So if you are motivated by this, if this is your primary reason for wanting to leave Babylon, then it could be that the Most High is giving you an individual instruction to be part of the first process of leaving Babylon, which he would be inspiring you from the Passover season and onwards. And there are people that have said in the last couple of weeks, they've just had this urge to leave. They want to leave. And maybe they haven't had that urge before. Or maybe they've had the desire, but it was motivated by wrong things. But now they are just feeling in their Ruach, do you know what? I've had enough of this place. I really want to leave. And not because I'm scared, not because I have a situation that I'm living in that I don't like. I just want to be with the Most High and his people. These are things that indicate that we are being called. And then in Psalm chapter 37 and verse 4, it says, "Delight thyself also in Yah, and he shall give thee the desires of your heart." So if you are one who is delighted and rejoices and give thanks and praise to the Most High, then he will put a desire in your heart. He will give you a desire that is of him, and he will complete it. He will give you those things. He will make those things come to pass. So if you know you are somebody that serves Yah in all your heart and loves him and believes in him and wants to be with him, he will put a desire in your heart that he will fulfill. And if that desire in your heart is to leave Babylon, then he may be calling you to the first part of the process, which is to leave, for you to leave. Now, as I said before, this is not for everyone, because this is on an individual, case by case, family by family basis. But we have had some people leave. We've had some families decide to pack up and go. And if they are for this reason, or if they are motivated by wanting to be with the Most High and his people, then that is the instruction he's given them. But it won't be the instruction for every person because of this next thing. Now, is your desire to leave a recent or sudden one that has become present in your Ruach? This is what I was talking about just a minute ago, where you've just had this feeling of recent that you want to leave and that you want to make or get a way out because you just want to be in Yah's presence. And we know that when we're in captivity in the Western world, we are far from his presence in terms of the world that we're living in, because everything is set up for Hasatan rather than for the glorification of the Most High. So if you've had this recent or sudden or pressing desire in your Ruach, then as in the case of all these things, you need to get in front of the Most High and ask him what he's instructing you to do. Now, if you haven't had these things, the likelihood is then he's not instructing you to do them. But if you have had these things, we're going to look at what it says in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 3, where it says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end of it, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." And so when the Most High gives us a vision, when he gives us a desire, when he gives us a want to do something, it is at an appointed time. It will not be at any time. It will be a time that he has appointed. And at the end of that time, when that time has passed, the Most High does not lie. And though it might seem like it is taking a long time, just wait for it, because surely it will come to pass, because the Most High is not a liar, and it will not delay, meaning it will always happen at its appointed time. The Most High will always give you the instruction at its right time, not too early, not too late. So he gives you first the desire to do something. And once you have the desire, then he gives you the opportunity. He makes the way open up for you. And then he gives you the means or the tools. He gives you the way to accomplish that thing that he has made your desire. So if you have a recent or sudden want to leave Babylon, could that be the Most High giving you that desire? And if he's giving you that desire, do you have the opportunity? Is it possible for you to do? Is it something that's within your power? And therefore, do you have the means? Do you have the tools, whether that be financially, whether that be in the form of legally, passport, visa, all these things? Do you have the tools to be able to fulfill that desire? Do you have the opportunity? If you have all those things and have the desire, which is the key thing, motivated by wanting to be with the Most High and his people, then the likelihood is he's calling you to make that transition. And only you can know the answer to these questions by getting in front of the Most High, because it is on an individual basis. Collectively, i.e. the body of Yasharal, I don't believe is telling us to leave collectively, because if he was, the signs, the signals, the revelation would be there and people would have left. The Most High is not late on his promises. But individually speaking, it seems that since the first Exodus, that the Most High has brought us now to the brink of the second Exodus, and people are leaving, or people have left prior and people are leaving now, and going forward more and more people will be having these desires on an individual basis. And if your circumstance doesn't allow you to leave for whatever that is, whether it be for financial reasons, whether it be for legal reasons, there are many situations. Somebody might be in prison. They can't leave because they're in prison. Somebody might not have the money. Somebody might be elderly and not have any support to make this transition. There are all sorts of situations and circumstances that individually we have, which means we won't be able to make this transition unless the Most High makes a way. If you find yourself in one of those positions, the likelihood is the Most High hasn't set your appointed time yet.